Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. I'm here with Coach Cornelia.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
And she's all the way in Romania. I'm here in the United States. And today's episode, we kind of talked about doing like part twos on some of the bigger, more expansive topics. So today's part two is feminism. So I wanted to talk specifically about like women becoming empowered through feminism or disempowered through feminism. What do you think?
Well, when we said we're going to talk about feminism again, I've been thinking about what does it really mean or what it used to mean before. And when we think about how it started, it was about expanding choices for women and fighting for women's rights. And now how I feel about it is that it's just one choice: to be career-driven, independent. If you want to make other choices, you're kind of judged. And I think it lost its focus somehow, the feminism.
I see it as it's like kind of almost like a crutch. So I've seen recently where they're taking something that should be empowering somebody, right? So these are like politicians, governments, right? They're taking something that should be used to empower somebody. However, they're weaponizing it in a way that it makes the person the victim.
Yeah.
Right? So feminism now is a constant victimhood versus empowering women to like make choices, be strong, be independent, right? So like you can be those things, but still fall into specific roles that are typically for women, right? Because like once we start separating away from that, you start to see society starting to collapse. You're seeing kids. We talked about in our teenagers episode, we talked about kids and parents, and they're interacting less. Moms are guiding their children less, and other people are doing it for them. That's a de-evolution of society.
For sure. That's the main problem here. And I mean, I'm not judging anyone for what it is, but I think that the fight that started in feminism was, as I said, for women's rights, and it should continue like this. For example, they should fight for a woman right to work from home, or to have less hours at work, or to have more, maybe more, what's that called? When you have more diversity at work, like diverse hours. You can come in different hours or whatever, these kind of things. What happens now is that you have one choice, and if you're not following the choice, if you're not that woman that feels repressed, so you want to be an independent woman, and everyone feels repressed by masculine toxicity, by society, by this and that. We only have one choice now: be career-driven, independent, childless. That's a huge problem, and we're going to talk about this later. And society is only empowering the woman who want this. If you want something else, if you want to be a traditional wife, if you want to nurture your kids, if you want something else, the society disempowers you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're looked at as kind of like a traditionalist or somebody like you're not looked at as strong or independent. You're looked at as under the arm of the man. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Like I've seen women make that choice that are just as strong and they're just as well played in house. They just have a different path in life, and maybe a more traditional path in life that other people aren't doing. But when we start to look at it, and we talked about this before, as soon as you incentivize a government or a person in power to, take control of something, and you give it that power to take control, but also to victimize the person, right? So like you incentivize that behavior to continue. So when I look at like women going to work, yeah, it's the tax bracket. You know, I mean, they're literally empowering women to go to work so they can pay income tax and pay tax on money that they're spending. I mean, there's really no other reason to draw people away from the family unit unless we look at some of the other kind of theories that are out there when you talk about global depopulation for climate change. I mean, and I don't want to go off on that tangent too much, but we look at that. But in the money realm, there's always that talk of wage gap when women are like when women are going to work. So
Mhm.
like females, they go to work, they get paid less. I mean, we're constantly hearing that they're getting paid less. But you touched on something that I thought was interesting: the diverse hours, or the swing shifts, or being able to like work around that. So she could still be like, "Mom, you don't have to work as much." I mean, nowadays you do have to work as much because they're taxing us so much. Inflation's up, so we have to work, right? That so do the women. The women have to work. They're not around their kids. We talked about this in teenagers
Yeah.
podcasts. The wage gap. I don't necessarily think there is a wage gap because if I go to work right now where I work and I have the same job and the same qualifications as a female, we are getting paid the same amount of dollars. It's actually illegal for somebody to not pay us the same amount of money for the same
Hmm.
work. So the wage gap, what I'm seeing, would come from a woman picking like different hours, right? Some cases the wage gap could be different. The women could pick like the night shift and get paid like night money or like an incentive for that.
Yeah.
So like it's dependent on where they're going to work, right? It also depends on their career path. A lot of women pick a career path that um, doesn't necessarily pay as much as a trade or a specialty skill or, you know, a high risk job or a long hours job. So the wage gap that they're talking about is literally just the difference between types of jobs that women are wanting to apply themselves to versus men want to apply themselves to. And that's for just from what I'm seeing, because it's illegal for a company, like let's say if I'm a cashier at McDonald's and you're a cashier at McDonald's, unless there's time in job, right? So like let's say I've got a year over you. Sure, there might be
Hmm.
like an incentive to pay me like, 10 cents more, but if we have the same job, we're getting paid the same amount of money. When they
Yeah.
go to a job interview, the person, or like when they get hired on, the person's like, okay, we're hiring like three people, two of them are male, they're getting $20, the female's getting $15. It doesn't
Mm.
work like that.
It doesn't work like that either in Europe. At least it's not like that. So this is a fake problem, at least in the last years, because maybe it was happening before. And what I see it happen, for example, I'm training leaders. When a woman goes and negotiates for a high position, uh, she's getting less money. At least in Europe, she's getting less money than a male,
Mhm.
but only in high positions.
Okay,
On
so you are
like,
seeing, you're not seeing it kind of like on the lower, but also you're seeing it in the higher
yeah,
positions. I mean, that's because most of Europe's run by, an older generation of male. And then unfortunately, if you're seeing it in Europe as a wage gap, I mean, I don't necessarily, it's illegal for it to be here in the United States, for there to be a wage gap in that aspect, right? So, like, if I'm going for a supervisor position and you're going for a supervisor position, we're going to get paid the same amount of dollars
mhm,
depending on merit, qualifications, and time in service. I mean, so like it all depends on those things.
yeah,
Um, and I find that to be really interesting because they did have to at one point in time fight for that equality. But now that fight for equality or fake problem, it's not a fake problem, it's kind of like a perceived problem, but it's also propagated. It's like pushed by governments and women in power that are already in power, right? They're saying, "Oh, you have this wage gap. You have this wage gap. Come to me, I'll fix that wage gap." So again, you're seeing people manipulate other people with this problem, at least here in the United States, to get power.
Yeah, I think it's the last right that they fought for. I mean, I haven't seen any new right. Um, but I can see that some of the rights that we used to have, we don't have it anymore because of the transgender community, or not community, transgender, how can you call it? Current or something, how can we call it? Because this transgenderism, you can see that the woman is not called a woman anymore, she's not called a mother anymore, she doesn't have the same rights as before, she's not allowed to know, like in the States, in schools, and in it's happening in Canada, and the UK started to lower this thing, but we had the same problem in UK, where the mother was not allowed to know if their kids wants to change their gender.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think it's one of the biggest rights that we have to know about our kids, no matter what, we have to know about it. So I think we started to lose rights in the last years since this transgenderism started.
Well, it's not just that. It's like, yes, there is we'll call it like the LGBTQ. I don't know how many there are. LGBTQ,
And
AIP plus. I don't know, but if what that community, right? With that community, what you're seeing is like women are disenfranchised to be empowered over their kids, right? So like you're saying, the government's like, oh, we know what's best for your kid. We know what's best for your kid. California, the government can take your kid away if you don't want to transition the kid. There's other states that'll do that. They'll come and put them in, you know what I mean? So that's
yeah,
disempowering a woman to make choices. It's the opposite of what they're actually saying they're trying to do, which is
yeah,
give women choices. They're actually taking that away, um, in that aspect, because the child doesn't belong to the state. However, the state is stepping in because the mother is now, in some cases, absent, unable to guide the kid, or the kid has been misguided in a different direction by somebody else that's engaged with the kid more than the mother is, because the mom's at work, mom's doing this, mom's doing that. So, I mean, you're right. We're taking away from those things. Now, the wage gap is a problem that is being pushed in order to make women feel like victims, in order for
hmm
people in power to get more power. Same thing with, like, you talked about this, like the women's advancement. So in higher positions, women are getting paid less. Now let me ask you this. I mean, maybe you don't know, but like the prime minister of Italy is a woman, right? Is she getting paid less than the previous male prime minister, or do you think she's getting paid more?
I think she's paid the same.
Or the same. So
Yeah.
I mean, so there is that. We're seeing that come there. And now the next part of after wage gap is the barrier to women's advancement, right? So as women are at work, they're looking at getting this job, they're moving forward, they want to advance. However,
hmm
they have less time that they can commit. Let's say they do want to have children. Now they have less time that they can commit to the job, while the male typically is willing to stay at work longer, work more high risk jobs. A mom is, in most cases, less likely to take a high risk job. And so it's, I see this barrier to women's advancement comes from within. It doesn't necessarily come from exterior forces. So if me and you work at the same position, right?
hmm
But you have a kid and you are up for a promotion and I'm up for a promotion, right? I don't have a kid, or I'm not, or I'm married and, like I have a wife that's taking care of the kids, right? I can work, more hours than you can because you're restricted by the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a barrier that should be, brought into factor when that promotion comes up?
For some, if you are in a company, right?
Mhm.
I think if it's a position that a woman wants and the man wants, they should go for it. And the woman would decide how she's gonna deal with it, and the men as well, not the ones that are doing that are taking the job out on the market.
Mhm.
That's the woman's problem if she wants to. I think it's we are so stuck in these ideas like should we do this, should we should just accept that we are different. um Even a woman is very different from another woman, even if we're close as like we think the same. For example, I have a friend, we think the same, but we are very different. So, and the men are different as well, so we should just accept that we are different. I think men should have the same rights as women. I mean, we cannot talk about only women's rights, right? Because now everyone is talking about in the last 30 years, more, maybe more. We are talking about women's rights, and now the men are in this situation where no one is talking about them, no one cares about them. They should just work. If they try to be themselves, they are toxic,
Mhm.
right? It's crazy what's going on. I think we just should accept. So going back to your question, it's a position. The man should decide on it. The woman should decide on it. If she decides that she likes what she sees in that job description, she should go for it. And the same with the man.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think you're right. It is up to the woman to deal with the
Mm-hmm.
consequences. Consequences can be good or bad of her decision, right? So let's say she chooses a job, she's got a kid. The consequences is she may not get to spend as much time with the kid. That's not a barrier to your advancement. It's basically a choice that the woman
Choice.
has to
Yeah,
make, right? So then that's empowering women's choice rather than
sure.
a barrier to the advancement. I think that they're using that barrier to advancement again to disenfranchise women, put them in the victim box, and then exploit that victim box in order to get more power. The same thing goes for another controversial topic here, abortion. And
Mm,
so, like we've talked about this briefly before, but body autonomy and abortions rights in America is a pretty big deal. I see a lot of people are using abortion as a way to, again, put women in a victim box and exploit that. Um, and I don't necessarily see how that works. I mean, there are laws in place to protect women, lot for loss of life. There's other exigent circumstances that are there that allow for those things to happen. Um,
mm-hmm.
me
But
personally,
Michael, let me just, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to
yeah.
understand because I can see on the news that the United States don't have this problem settled. Like in Europe, it's settled since many years ago and no one is talking about it. The only change that has been was in Poland where they're not allowed to do abortions anymore. Uh, and the population accepted and they voted for it. So, I don't understand what's the situation. I mean, I guess it's different from state to state over there or something like that.
So when President Trump was in office previously, he removed like a what's called Roe v. Wade, which had a federal control over abortion, and
Mm-hmm.
he got rid of that and basically put the power back into the state's hands,
Mm-hmm.
which means that if you lived in a state, you could vote for like you wanted abortion, you didn't want abortion. So it was based off of like where you live that the population was going to be, deciding that thing. However, there are several states that don't have like an age restriction on the abortion, so you can carry like third trimester. I mean, there's some states that have even said that, like the child is born and then we have to decide what to do with it,
Oh yeah, I've
after,
seen it.
right? You see
I
that?
was yeah, it's awful. I mean, is it real?
I haven't experienced it. I don't know, but I mean, I've seen the interviews. I've seen the people say that directly into a camera. So the only thing I could do is take their word for it. That,
Yeah.
that that's what they're doing. I mean, they're doing like third trimester abortions and stuff like that. What's interesting is that we're supposed to be empowering women to like make this choice and do this and do that. And me, I don't really have a say on abortion because I don't have babies. Me personally, do whatever you want. I don't have to live with it. However, the same people that are pushing this body autonomy for abortion were very strict and very punishing and very controlling when it came to the COVID vaccine. So, right? So, like, they're like, oh, women have this choice with their bodies. I have a medical choice with my body. Sure. But doesn't everybody have a medical choice with their body? Instead, the federal government just tried to do the exact same thing and mandated everybody got vaccinated. Um, and a lot of people got hurt by that.
Yeah,
A
I
lot of
hate
people,
this double
a lot of
pressure.
people lost jobs. Men and women lost jobs because they were resistant to the mandates of getting the vaccine. Now we've got the government in an election year saying, oh, body autonomy, women's rights, abortion, while also that disenfranchises, that basically says that everybody that was concerned about, the vaccine, um, where did that concern go for body autonomy and body choice?
Mm,
So, I mean, and that was not just one half of the population, that was men and women for the vaccine.
yeah.
Now they're weaponizing that same mentality against people for this.
I don't think they should be allowed to do the abortion late in the pregnancy. So in Europe, we have it until 3.5 months. I think we are allowed to do it, and then not anymore. In Poland, they don't have this option anymore, and it is a bad thing when you are not allowed to do it at all. And the women in the east of Europe experienced it when we had the communism, and the women were not allowed to have abortion. And there's been so many women who died because they tried different things at home.
Mm-hmm.
So there should be a middle path to it, I think.
Mm-hmm. The
So
hard part
I
is
don't, I
finding out
don't
where
see
the
it like,
middle path is.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, sure, I know, but I think this is with the third 3 months. I think it's a good one for, in my opinion. Not further, and I don't think a woman should decide just like that. I'm gonna do it in the ninth month. What? That's yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Right. I mean, like, so I'm going to go devil's advocate here, but I'm not advocating for this, right? So, with the baby still in the mom, and I'm going to hit both sides of this. One, the baby can feel pain at like in the third trimester, can feel pain, is experiencing emotions, has lived here, is
To
hearing
be a human
sounds,
being.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So just a very small human being, right? So there is that to factor in. There's also the factor of, like you've had this much time to
Mm-hmm.
make a decision, right?
Sure.
To like float ideas, right? To, not party, get your head into the mix and like really think pros, cons. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is that to be said, but like I said, for me personally, it's not my body. I'm the male. I don't have babies. So I don't really have a say in it. However, it's hard to put the control hands in the government's hands because you're right. When they ban it completely, they try alternative methods. It's like anytime you ban something or you make something illegal, you create a black market for it.
Sure. Yeah.
So when and then at that point in time, it's non-regulated, and people will do what they're going to do to get it. So I mean, it's like a double-edged sword, and I don't really know where to put it because like as soon as the brain's formed and it's capable of like emotions and sensory perception, I think that's probably where personally I would say to cut it to put the like you shouldn't be having an abortion after this, but if you have like a medical issue or like you're gonna die or
Yeah,
like
that's
something like
different.
that could be that's like an exigent circumstance, but there's a time period in there where women have time to think.
Yeah, I
Maybe
agree.
they're just not thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I think Europe chose. I think it's a good thing that we have 3 months. That's enough to think about it, and to talk with your partner and whatever you decide what you want. But I think after 3.5 months, the baby starts to figure itself and starts to have some human form indeed. So I don't think it's
And I think
normal
here in the
abortion
United
after.
States, they're weaponizing the fact that, like they're saying nationwide abortion ban, but I'm pretty sure I heard somebody say that they were going to have, cutouts for rape and incest, loss of life,
Mm-hmm.
or, so I don't remember what the third one was, but like I'm pretty sure I heard somebody say that. So for them to say otherwise is again trying to put women, disempower them, put them in the victim box, and weaponize their own bodies against them.
And they don't
Their
even care
feelings.
about it. That's how I feel. I don't think the woman is or the kid. I don't think they really care about the woman or the kid inside of that woman. They care only about their political gains somehow. I don't really think that someone cares about it. I don't think any of them sit and thought about the woman. How would she feel in this situation, or how would she feel in that situation? They can talk to doctors, they can talk to scientists. I don't think they really care. And everyone who is talking about women rights, feminism, I don't really think that they care about the woman still. They used to before. I really don't. It's just like a woman is a pawn. Just I don't know, gain something from it.
It is. That's
That's a
exactly.
bad thing because you can see the society going down. That's for sure. I mean, without a woman there, the society goes down. I mean, a woman is disempowered, like you said. A man is disempowered as well. Now, a man is not allowed to be a man anymore. He should be like, I don't even understand what they want a man to be, but he's always also disempowered. So now you have both genders, normal genders disempowered, and you have the transgender ones empowered.
Let's talk about barriers and advancement and wage gap. There's actually incentives to hire women and like LGBT, yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
like there's incentives to hire that. There's also incentives to
Yeah,
hire minorities, which is technically illegal, but they're trying to diversify their, ranks. They're again, yes, like you said, disempowering men, attacking men while empowering these other people. Technically, it's illegal to, hire based off of race, sex, or identity
hmm,
or whatever, but they're still
yeah,
doing it. So, if anything, women right now, specifically, if we're going to talk about feminism, women are empowered to get a job, which then takes them and puts them in a tax bracket, which then takes them away from their children, which then allows the government to manipulate all of those little cogs to gain
mm,
power. All I see is people moving towards power and using women for that. They're actually
yeah,
using women. They're actually creating victims to give them the solution by using these things as weapons. So I wanted to touch on toxic masculinity because I mean we are doing a podcast. This one's feminism part two, but toxic masculinity plays into it.
mm,
Here's how they've victim boxed most women. Now the elites and the politicians, they're not victim boxing themselves. They're empowering themselves by victim
mm,
boxing others. Now, with toxic masculinity, right? Let's say we've now turned against men. We don't like men. We don't
mm,
need men. I'm successful. I've got this job. I've got this. I don't need men. I don't need kids. I don't need that. Right. Now that we've done that as a society or as a government has done this to women, victim box them under the guise of empowering them, they've taken them away from the traditional role and made them more into the battery role. So if you look at any kind of government, any type of society, you need things to fund that society. So now we talk back getting women into work for taxes, right? But
mm,
if you've disenfranchised men from toxic masculinity and you have a whole bunch of effeminate men, those women are instinctually still going to be looking for strong men. But if you've effeminated all of your men, you're not going to be able to find that. Therefore, you may achieve that, that goal of population control.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you look at what's happening, they're targeting men, men being boys, boys being men, whatever it is, they're targeting men. If the world was under the control of only women, I don't know how that would look.
I know.
I also, you don't
Can I
know.
please say?
Yeah, go ahead.
um Usually, women are gonna hate me for saying it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. In Europe, we had Angela Merkel.
Mhm.
She destroyed Europe, in my opinion. Now we had this other one, I don't remember her name, who is leading Europe, another bad leader, in my opinion, again. We have a lot of, the situation in Europe.
Mhm. It's turning out bad over in Europe.
It looks like it, yeah.
Mhm.
It looks like I mean, UK started to change its policies a little bit because they see that it's not a good place where we're in, but I'm not sure about these other countries. I'm not afraid for Romania because we are a traditional country, so we're not gonna be in this situation. But Denmark, for example, where Maria might want to grow up when she is older, it might be in this situation at one point.
Mhm. So
And
that's
in Denmark, you have a woman in charge as well. The prime minister is a woman as well. So I'm not very into. I mean, I am into women in politics, but I'm not. I don't feel that they should rule the world. You know what I mean?
okay. I mean, it does the track record for any kind of leader, actually. I mean, it's not just women, right? But yes, women leader, the track hasn't been great. So, like, it's hard to place it. But again, if they are in charge and we've effeminated all the men, basically mind neutered the men, who's fighting the wars? Who's standing
Mm-hmm.
up for the women? The women can't stand up for themselves because they've been victim boxed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who's standing up for them? The effeminate men? No, they can't do it because they are just in the same box as the women. So it's quite interesting to see how they've done this. But there are other societies, right? So in your you said that you're worried about Sharia law being implemented across Europe. I mean, when you import these people into a society and they refuse to integrate and instead decide to declare their own type of government inside that
Mm-hmm.
area, that's not great. And if it's being allowed to happen, that's even worse. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
and don't get me wrong. I don't have anything against Sharia law, except that I'm not part of it, right? So they should do it. Everyone should stay at their homes and do what they want in their homes. You cannot come into my house and change the rules. I cannot come into your house like many did in the East.
yeah.
Yeah, where they went over them and tried to change. They should be allowed to do whatever they want. We should be allowed to do whatever we want, whatever fits us.
Mm-hmm.
So if they come with this law over us and we go there with our laws, it's not gonna end good.
Right. And I mean, you're seeing that across the globe where people
Mhm.
are being moved. It's weird because
Yeah.
we're gonna segue here. People are being moved from different locations. Hostile communities are being moved into native communities and they're not jiving. However, the hostile communities that are being imported are being protected versus the native community, which is being disenfranchised and literally forced to take it. So that's interesting. I know we separated away from feminism there for a little bit, but like, let's talk about education, women's education, right? In some countries, specifically under Sharia law, women can't have education, right? So you can't. I mean, to a certain degree, I think there's like a certain like a cap on like the
Depends
education
on, yeah,
limit.
it depends on the country, from country to country. Some of them have all the rights that we have
Hmm.
and they fought for it, and some don't have just any rights. So it's horrible for them. That should be maybe a next target for the feminist movement.
Hmm.
Free
I think,
those women.
yeah,
Leave us alone. Free
they don't
those ones.
see it.
Mm.
They don't see it because they either aren't looking at it or they're, like they're not looking at it. Like, so I see a lot of women that are supporting certain ideologies that actually would oppress them should those
Hmm.
ideologies be, the primary controller of the area that they'd be in. So it's really not, it's not great. It,
I remember I've seen a show, and someone was, and it's a transgender person. She's very smart, and she was talking about these companies who are being transgender in the country where it's easy to be. And so, let's say they put on the what, let's say cereals, okay, and they put on the cereals, they put we support transgenderism or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's easy to do it in Europe or in the United States or in Canada, Australia, but they will never put this in these kind of countries, the other kind in the east of the world. They would never do it because they're not accepted over there. So
Mhm.
they will never put in danger their businesses to support this community.
Mhm.
So it's kind of it's a little bit of hypocrisy in it's the same with the women. So you fight for women rights here, but you're not going where it's harder to fight for, right?
Right. I mean, they have a platform here, freedom, like, I mean, somewhat freedom of speech in the United States. I think we're losing our freedom of speech
Oh, yeah,
slowly. But in Europe, they're definitely losing it. So when you look at that, you're right. It's easy to speak up when you have a place that you can speak up. But as soon as you get to a place where you can't and it's capped, it's not so easy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a big difference in like somebody that's fighting for women's rights in the Middle East versus somebody that's fighting for women's rights and equality in the United States. They technically have women's rights and equality to, speech, education, religion, whatever in the United States. You may not have that if you're in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, in somewhere in the Middle East or even China. Um, and that's just because that's how those places have lived for thousands of years. And again, when you start to import that into your country and they refuse to change their system to align with the host system, you're going to have a problem. Case in point, let's talk about this. Anytime you get sick, COVID virus, COVID vaccine, you introduce the COVID vaccine, or not COVID vaccine, but the COVID virus into the human body. In some cases, you introduce the vaccine into the human body, the body reacts negatively to that
Mm-hmm.
virus, right? The
Mm-hmm.
host reacts negatively to the virus. However, if you cap the host and you prevent it from reacting to the virus, then the virus spreads.
Mm-hmm.
So if you disenfranchise, like in Europe, you said they're worried about Muslim areas and Sharia law, right? Now that you've imported that, if you are unwilling to protect the host nation people, that will spread. It will
Mm-hmm.
continue to spread. Um, but I jumped way off from education.
Not away. It's not very away from it because Angela Merkel, she's a woman and she did this in Europe, and
Mhm.
it's something that is hard to understand because I I agree so much with receiving the victims of wars.
Mhm.
So I was expecting, and I worked with an NGO who was raising money for refugees, and I was expecting women, kids, maybe old people, and here they come, so many young and strong men. So it's something it doesn't add, and it was a woman who did it. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Isn't
we're
the
on the topic.
current leader, is it like Ursula
Yeah,
von
that's
I don't know, but I think that's her,
under
right?
my yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just went from bad to worse in that aspect. But again, women have equal access to education here in the United States and in most cases in Europe. They don't have that in Afghanistan, right?
No.
So we fought so hard for that education in the United States. I think that was a big deal. Women want to go to, go to school, go to college, and then like get that education. I got no problem with that. The problem is that what they're picking for their education, right? So like women are more likely to lean towards gender studies, social work,
Should.
these
Should.
emotional based work
Mm-hmm.
items. Men are more geared toward the high risk, the trades, the business, those kind of things. Now, what happens is because of that choice, we're going to circle all the way back to the wage gap. Because of their educational choices, their employment opportunities are different. Those employment opportunities may pay less, not
Mm-hmm.
because they're a woman, but because that job is like less high risk or requires less hard like qualifications. So
Mm-hmm.
like the difference is like a man could go into the same social work job as a woman and get paid the exact same.
Yeah.
But if that man switches to like, I don't know, like a high skilled trade, he's going to get paid more. It has nothing to do with
Gender.
gender. It has to do with the educational path and
Yeah.
the job chosen after that. So I think people are unwilling to face the consequences of their own decisions when it comes to like those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. But as why I was thinking about this career-driven feminist woman. So I don't feel that there is a choice anymore. Like if you're not like that, if you're not obsessed with work, if you're not obsessed with your career, then you're not normal. You're not considered normal. And if you want to be more traditional, if you want to have a job like you are saying, a teacher, a nurse, I feel that no matter how we try to fake the truth is that men are made for some jobs and women are made for some jobs. That's
Mhm.
how I feel. And of course, there might be exceptions because I had a teacher who, he was a first grade teacher, and he was great. But usually, you see a woman in that role, right? So there might be exceptions, but there is jobs for women and there is jobs for men, and the payment is not made because you're a man or you're a woman. It's up on that job description.
Mhm. So, and then hold on, let me throw this in here because this is about that jobs thing, right? So, women, it's documented that women in many cases have a higher pain tolerance than men because they give birth, their body changes, the
Mhm.
structure, the whole process of giving birth requires a very high level of pain tolerance for that. So, by that logic, women should be doing all of the combat roles in the military. Now, that's a very controversial topic because we've kept women out of the out of the combat roles as much as to be allowed. Now they're allowed in to certain degrees. The standards, however, have changed. So, when back to the pain thing, because they're have a higher pain tolerance, they should be on the front lines. But other countries may not be willing to put women in that role, which means the women will be fighting men. Now they have a higher pain tolerance, but they don't have the same strength as men, which
Sure,
now
yeah.
puts us into like the trans men and women that are cross sports. So we've done that, and now that's why a lot of sports that are dominated by trans people, they're you're seeing like an advantage. If you have a
Yeah.
women's basketball team against a women's basketball team, but half the team's trans, technically
Mm.
men, biological men, who've been getting testosterone, have stronger muscles, reaction time, they're going to be at a disadvantage. The all women team will be at a disadvantage. So you put that on a combat battlefield, who's going to win? The
Mhm.
all female team or the male team? And it's like you you can't win. because they victim box these people so much. Away from the pain thing, if we look at how society is built, back to what you're saying, it's almost not normal for a woman to go be a career driven woman anymore. And I think that's kind of sad when you think about the actual role of women in any other nature, any other, most other species. Women are there
Yeah.
for the children.
Yeah, and talking about children, and it's something on my list to talk about today. Did you know that 50% of the women under 30 don't have kids these days?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Half of them don't say that they don't even want kids.
Mm-hmm.
Studies show that later in life, when they're 40, they're gonna regret it. So, and it's very hard when you're 40. We have to respect biology, and the truth is that the fertility goes down very, very, very down around 40.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be very hard for them to have a kid and to have a partner because most of them are single,
Mm-hmm.
single, driven women. And then when you think about them at 50, 60 years old alone, it's a very sad image
Mm-hmm.
to think
I mean,
about
but
it.
that's what they're being told that is it. And while at the same time, they're effeminating men. So even by
Mm-hmm.
the time they get to that point, they're going to want the men that they can't have because their toxic masculinity is oozing out of them, right? So they'll have to be stuck in their victim box because their friends won't want it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like if a group of girls is hanging out and one girl likes the bad guy nowadays, before it was awesome, like you wanted like the bad guy, the adventurer,
Yeah.
right? Now you look at that girl wants that, they're like, oh no, 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 no. We can't
Mm.
have that because he's toxic. Toxic masculinity. He works out too much. He does this, he does that. What I'm seeing
Yeah,
now is
we can't do our nails together.
yeah,
We don't want that one.
and then what I'm seeing is like even like women that are like I think I saw like an interview, they like a boardwalk interview, and it was just like two very out of shape women that expected men that were highly muscular to want
Mm.
them while they
Mm-hmm.
weren't really doing anything for themselves. I mean, they're very overweight, and they wanted, I think the guy had like two different pictures and they wanted this like strapped muscular guy. And it may be a possibility that they may encounter that, but highly unlikely
Sure.
because they also wanted to be like strong women and empowered and this and that. They're in the victim box, but they think they're empowered.
Mm-hmm.
So they want that. And then what society's telling them is they want that effeminate men, whatever, while internally they want the masculine man that can provide and protect and hunt and do all of those things.
Yeah, and Micah, it's not about what they want. It's what us women need. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we that's how we are built to need, to feel, whatever. So it's not something, it's not like I'm waking up in the morning and I say, okay, I want this kind of guy. No, it's something that we need.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that so many people are saying that it's not true, it doesn't mean that it's not true. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is. And if you look at the animals, it's the same thing. A woman is more gentle, it's more thin, maybe more smaller, and the guy comes and protects her.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, the male is the one who um protects the, how do
Mm-hmm.
you call it, shelter, not shelter, whatever, how is it called,
I don't know, burrow, I don't den, whatever.
like
The
the
house.
house. Yeah,
Yeah.
the house. So no matter how much propaganda is, the people who are still sane, and I think that me and you are still sane, and there's so many people like us, we should keep talking about it and
Mm-hmm.
keep going back to normality, because if you let them make the agenda, it's not going to be a good place to be in 20 years. And I'm thinking about my girl. What kind of guy is she going to find?
Mm-hmm.
Because these days, like you said, most of the guys are feminine. They
Yeah.
do the I have nothing against doing your nails as a man. I mean, Alice Cooper was doing it like 40 years ago, and he was still a very strong masculine image. So
Mhm.
it's not masculinity doesn't sit on these things, but we have to talk about what normality is, what a man is, what a woman is, and the ones with gender dysphoria are welcomed to join the normality, because they are normality. When you have gender dysphoria, it's normal to have it. It's normal to change your gender. It's not normal to change it just because in the morning you feel like you're something else, and tomorrow you're something else, or even worse when you're a cat or a wolf or a bear or whatever they are these
Right.
days.
I mean, and then empowering the mindset that people can just change on a whim or be something or not identify, right? Because, like, here's the problem: because we've taken away the traditional family roles out of the house, and I mean, even saying having a traditional family can be looked at bad, right? Man goes to work, woman stays at home, takes care of the kid, right? School education, right? Um, because of that, we've got kids, teenagers, young adults that can't identify themselves because they don't have a positive role model in the house. Their parents aren't there. Their mom isn't there. Their dad's not there. They don't have somebody teaching them from one generation to the next. Instead, they've got an education system that's geared towards, incentivized to victim
Yeah.
box women and men and control them for the next vote. Now, here's something that's interesting. We've talked about like women being empowered and like, they don't want kids, they're getting these careers. Well, all of the people that our governments are importing, this is a global problem. Across the globe, except for maybe in like China and Russia and like some other countries, almost every global government is importing migrants or refugees or asylum seekers or
Yeah.
protected peoples, right? What happens? They're facilitating it. They're not just allowing it to happen. They're allowing it to happen. They're facilitating it, and they're not punishing illegal versions of that. What does that mean? Those people that they're bringing in aren't stopping having kids. The population of the United States is rapidly
Mhm.
declining from home births. However, foreign births, migrant, illegal, and asylum births are skyrocketing. So what
Mhm.
happens? They brought these people in. Our society declines. A new society steps in. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm afraid, I mean, this is a segue. I'm afraid we're headed in the United States towards one party rule and the fall of our constitutional republic. So, I mean, and that's guided by births, which is something that women can do something about. But instead, women are being told to have abortions, go to work, and not worry about your kids. The government's got it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And talking about having choices, that's what feminism was at start, when you think about it. Having choices. Now you don't have a choice as a woman. So
Mhm.
if you choose to be this woman that stays at home and takes care of the kids and cooking, cleaning, whatever, you are not considered normal. So where are the choices then?
The choice is, it's fallen far from the initial view of feminism and empowerment is gone.
Sure,
Now
yeah.
it's almost like a perverse or deviant version of that. But if you look at any kind of thing that usually starts off good, most things start off good. And what happens? They're spoiled by bad actors or they're taken over by an ideology that has bad intentions for the people that are actually seeking relief or growth or change.
Yeah. What's gonna happen is that I mean it already happens that you don't have the family cell you don't have the kids and teenagers with values, you don't have values in society. The only value seems to be accepting the others, but at the same time you are not accepted anymore somehow if you have a different opinion. So this acceptance goes only one way.
It does.
So yeah, and somehow the majority became a minority,
Hmm.
and we have to deal with it. And that's sad because I'm thinking about our children, and sometimes as a parent, and I'm sure you feel it, you don't know what to tell to your kid. You
Hmm.
don't know um, how to raise them to fit in this new society that appears.
Right? Yeah, because you don't want to encourage them to be antagonistic, but you also
Mm.
want to put your values on them. So they've got traditionalists like us in a box of self-censoring ourselves for the feelings of others. And I don't really do that. I don't self-censor myself for anybody, maybe on this podcast, so it's a little bit more palatable. But like when I'm talking to people, I'm opinionated. I'm there. I'm very vocal about my stance on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more they get us to be quiet, the more they gain control of everybody.
I
So
agree.
we got to keep talking about it. We got to keep pushing it. And, it's, it's hard to do, but we got to keep it going.
Sure, I agree.
Well, thank you everybody for watching part 2 of feminism. If you have any questions, comments, concern, leave them in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to check out our websites. They're in there. And we'll catch you in the next